What do you think of the 30-day jail sentence given to NFL player Donte Stallworth for a fatal DUI? The victim's family is okay with it, but are you? It's your call right now. Former Eagle player Donte Stallworth has spent the last month in jail and now faces 2 years of house arrest for his part in a fatal DUI. But that sentence has been derided by some who say it sends the wrong message to society. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle. This hour, we'll be debating this controversial sentence handed down in a Florida courtroom. Here it is, 30 days behind bars, 2 years house arrest, lifetime loss of his license. That's the punishment for Donte Stallworth, a wide receiver with the Cleveland Browns. Here's what happened. On March 14th, Stallworth struck and killed a construction worker while driving drunk with a blood alcohol level of .126. That's well above the Florida or pretty much any state's legal limit. Stallworth reportedly cooperated fully with the authorities. Then on June 4th, prosecutors filed formal DUI manslaughter charges against him, to which Stallworth originally pleaded not guilty. Then he reportedly reached a financial settlement with the victim's family. Finally, on June 16th, Stallworth pleaded guilty to a plea and was sentenced to 30 days, or about there so, in prison and 2 years house arrest. He has started serving that and may very well be out at the time that we are airing this show. I was particularly interested in this case as it really piqued my curiosity about sentencing. After all, you remember we talked about Michael Vick. He went to jail for 23 months for his role in a dogfighting operation. And I have to ask the question, is that worse than a fatal DUI? Or is it comparing apples and oranges? We're going to give you a chance to weigh in, but first I want to pose that question to our guests. Let me introduce them to you now. It's a great panel. David M. Walker is a criminal defense attorney and a former Stanford University football standout. And Eric Peterson is an attorney in private practice. He's also a former Montgomery County Assistant District Attorney. An old friend of the show returns. He's Gary Cobb. He's a sports journalist and a former NFL player who played outside linebacker for the Detroit Lions, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And rounding out our panel is Dan Schwartzman. He's the host on 950 ESPN Radio in Philadelphia. That's every night, 7 to 10 p.m. Hey, guys, good to have you with us. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this because it's generated so much debate, particularly on the social networking sites. As a former prosecutor, what do you think of this deal? 30 days in jail for a fatal.
Well, to use a football analogy, the prosecutor fumbled the ball. Donte picked it up, ran it for a touchdown, and he's now in jail, the end zone, celebrating. This is ridiculous.
You can't really honestly think this man is celebrating. He has to live with the fact that he caused another human being's life.
I'll back off celebrating a little bit, but he certainly got away with murder. He certainly got away with it. He was over the legal limit. Everybody's saying, oh, it was an accident and these things happen. No, they don't. He did not accidentally drink. He did not actually get into his car. He did not accidentally turn the key. He did not accidentally put his foot on the accelerator and drive down the road and kill Mr. Reyes. The prosecutor should have stood up, backed his case, and fought to the end.
You started by saying that he got away with murder. Eric, you and I both know that that's not true. This was a just result for all parties, for Mr. Stallworth, for Mr. Reyes, for a couple of reasons. First, this was an accident. No one here, no one anywhere has ever alleged that Donte Stallworth had any ill intent, any guilty mind. That is one of the main reasons why we have this result. Second reason is he acted responsibly from the very outset of this. That night, there were no witnesses there. He stopped his car. He called police.
But isn't that what he's supposed to do?
He is supposed to do that, but in this day and time, that's not what is expected. And we're asking, why did he get this result? It's partly because of those actions on that night.
Now, you shouldn't get brownie points for doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stop. You're supposed to cooperate. There's certainly a fine line. Are you supposed to incriminate yourself? No, I agree with you there. But he's supposed to stop. He's supposed to provide his information. And that's what he did. And now he's getting brownie points for doing what he's supposed to do. I find that offensive.
He's not getting brownie points. He's getting a just result, something that was negotiated, and you and I both know this, between his lawyer, the district attorney, and then finally the family, who all approved it, and the judge had to approve it as well. So to say that he's getting brownie points, that he's celebrating, I can assure you that Donte Stallworth is not celebrating about this. It's a day that he'll regret for the rest of his life.
Now, there's a huge factor that needs to come into this also, is Mr. Reyes, who, without a doubt, we're all sad that he passed, but he was jaywalking. He was not inside, where you're supposed to be crossing the street at. And that's really why I believe the prosecutor agreed to this type of settlement, because it wasn't really clear as to the cause of the accident. And see, that's the key in here.
Gary, you're not suggesting that we blame the victim here.
No, not blaming the victim, but breaking the law is breaking the law. Both of them really were breaking the law. That's really the fact of the matter. That's a fact, meaning that he was not crossing where he's supposed to be crossing. And they say that there was video of it, and for the prosecution to agree to this with the video of it clearly says that it wasn't clear as to the cause of this accident.
Let's assume all that's correct, and I understand there's causation issues in the legal world, especially with a homicide by vehicle DUI. You have to prove that his drunkenness or his intoxication was a contributing factor in the accident. I get that. I understand that. But video, trust me, I looked for this video on the internet for several days. I can't find it. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. But you have the whole angle of he's speeding. That hasn't been discussed yet. He was able, according to the police report, he was able to flash his lights and do some things to try to get Mr. Reyes to say, hey, I'm here. He's driving a Bentley. Bentleys have good brakes, very tight steering. Put on the brakes, swerve, do something, honk your horn. It's his intoxication that caused a lot of this.
You didn't mention, though, you didn't agree and say, yes, he was outside of the lines, meaning like he was just crossing the street. He was not crossing where you're supposed to cross at.
Wait a minute, guys. But in most cities, the pedestrian, regardless of where you're crossing, has the right of way. And it's his responsibility to look out for pedestrians jumping out from wherever they are. Look, again, it is an accident, but let's forget all the legal mumbo-jumbo here. Reality is, guys, to get only 24 days in jail, which is essentially what he's going to serve for taking a human life, you can't possibly sit there and tell me that sounds fair. That sounds ridiculous.
Let me tell you this. If they felt that they could convict him, you think they would have settled that, especially in a state like Florida, which is really much tougher than sentencing than it is here. They don't play down there, and you know that's the reason he settled for this.
I'll tell you what happened
for a second.
Yeah.
Excuse me 1 second, because I do want to talk about the fact that the family agreed to this. And David, what does that tell you? If the family is not pushing the prosecutor to say, hey, get more time for this guy, we consider this a murder, is that actually telling us something about the case?
Yes, it's telling us what probably the relationship that Donte Stallworth has conveyed to this family. He reached out to them. That's the only way something like this gets settled. He and his attorney had to reach out. They have understood what was involved with this, and the prosecution probably explained to them, and Gary touched on this exactly. The prosecution undoubtedly went to them and said, this may be very difficult to prove in a court of law.
Now, you know what's going to happen there, Dan, is people are going to say that he bought his way out of it, because that's what happens whenever there's someone who has money and they reach a settlement of however you want to describe it. People are saying he's got the money, he's got a good lawyer, he bought his way out of it.
It's not only that, though, but when you have that kind of money, you can get the best legal representation possible, all right? And when you get the best legal representation, these guys are the best of the best. And when he, by the way, the day before, he just received a $4.5 million bonus from the Cleveland Browns.
So you apologize for getting good representation?
No, but what happens
is
there's nothing against
capitalist society,
right, but what happens is when you're a rich athlete like a Donte Stallworth or any one of these guys, or a celebrity of any sort who's got all this kind of money, what happens is you get the lawyer who knows how to play the system. And the prosecution knows, listen, guys, this is going to drag on and on. And frankly, I'm overmatched by this guy who's a better lawyer than I am.
This is all the more reason that they wanted to get him bad, because he knows he's going to get bad publicity out of him, the prosecutor. And that's all the more reason. You know they wanted to throw the book
but that doesn't
at him.
make it right. I mean, he's giving in with this sentence.
If you don't have a good case, you don't have a good case.
And wait a minute.
Just 1 second.
Go ahead, let me go.
Donte Stallworth was questioned and released on the morning of the incident. All right, questioned and released. Any defense attorney worth his salt, that case is over for the prosecution, because if the officers, they can make a site arrest that day and say, we're arresting you right now for DUI. They questioned him and released him. Can you imagine going before a jury and telling them, ladies and gentlemen, the police officers were unsure of his intoxication. How can we be sure here today that caused this accident? It's not guilty. 9 out of 10.
That may have played into the defense, and I hear you. But the argument,
he's not guilty.
The argument that he's a millionaire and he can hire the best lawyers, that's true. But when I was a prosecutor, I had the best detectives at my disposal. I had detectives that would go out and pound the streets 24/7 to find a bad guy, to find that one witness that's going to make the case stronger. The government and Donte Stallworth, as far as their legal firepower and how much work they can do to put their case together, that's an even playing field.
Correct.
The prosecutor should have, in my opinion, said, you know what, maybe I have a slight problem with my case, but we're putting it in front of a jury.